What's up, guys? Charlie Jones here from the podcast Armed and Successful, a podcast all about arming yourself with the knowledge to be successful in life and business in hopes of inspiring those that are working 9 to 5 to quit their job or continue the job while you're trying to start your own business. Today's guest is a very special guest because he's a longtime friend of mine, former boss. We'll get into that and more. Mr. Rick Trego. Welcome to the podcast, Rick.
What's up, man? How's everything going?
It's really good. It's really good, man. So we were just talking about this beforehand, where normally I have to research people and look them up, but me and you, we've known each other for so long that I know everything about you. I think maybe we'll get into some stuff that I don't know.
Yeah, man, there's a lot. I mean, being as old as we are, I'm sure there's stories that we probably haven't shared with each other and just our daily lives, man, just things happening. I'm sure there's some new ones out there we probably haven't shared yet.
No, absolutely. So let's get into it, man. So I'm going to go forwards and backwards with you because we know each other. So right now, for those of you guys that are watching, Rick and his wife own the up and coming, soon to be, if not the best, daycare provider business in Maryland. I don't have younger kids anymore. I'm glad, but if I did, honestly, it's not just because it's huge, because I know your background and I know the level of care and stuff that you put into things, as well as your wife. I would definitely go with you guys. So tell us a little bit about your business.
Yeah, man. So we started about 9 years ago. My wife was a teacher down in Baltimore City. Went to school for teaching. Got her master's degree. Worked in some daycares before becoming a teacher. And one summer, she came home last day of school, and she walked in, and you could just see it on her face. And she basically said, like, I'm not going back to teaching. I just can't do it. I think the city really took a toll on her. I knew she loved when she was a daycare teacher. She absolutely loved it. And she said, hey, I think I want to start my own daycare. And my first reaction was, well, where? And is there any money in that? Because you have a salary right now. We do have a mortgage. We got kids. And, how's that going to work? And she said, we're going to start right here in our living room. And I was like, our living room is 350 square feet. Like, how's that going to work? But she made it happen, man. She went in, she did all of her research. She built it from the ground up. And next thing you know, I have some carpentry background. I was downstairs redoing our basement, turned that into a large family center. So we had about 12 kids at the time, but our waiting list grew so big that we only had one choice, one choice, and that was to grow. We need to find a place, and we found a place in Annapolis, Maryland, opened up, and that's a funny story because it was literally the day that the world shut down for COVID. Like our opening day was the day that COVID was, out there ready to shut down. But we pushed through that. And then we opened up a place in Glen Burnie, Maryland. And right now we currently have, I want to say, on roster about 85 kids between the two locations. And we just now opened up our third location, and we're going to just grow into that. It's 10,000 square feet, so the world of possibilities is out there for this place.
That's amazing, man. And to touch on something that you said about your wife, having a job, stopping to start her dream. For those of you guys that don't know that are watching, I talk about this all the time about starting a business and having to take jobs until you make it work. That is how me and Rick met. Long story short, I was a loss prevention, believe it or not, guys, for those of you guys that don't know me. At JCPenney's, Rick was the man behind the man, in front of the man that actually hired me and gave me a shot to kind of cage my inner beast in so many words, but we worked very, very well together. So that opportunity, and I don't think I ever really thanked you, but because it meant a lot to me, gave me the opportunity to, to work, obviously, and make good money, but also continue my dream. So you're part of what I've been building here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, man. I tell you what, doing that job, you meet a lot of people, and I swear to you, Charlie, you're like one people that I'll never forget seeing your resume come across the desk. I think it was the first resume I ever seen with uh, a guy in a suit and tie with American flag behind him with his picture on the resume. And I just remember sitting there, and I was sitting with, the big man, and we were talking about trying to fill this position. It was very hard in Baltimore City. And we were like, we need somebody who can go in there and make an impact and be somebody who can, you know, not be afraid, one, and two, um, be a business owner, I guess you can say, of the responsibilities of that building. And when I saw your resume come across, I just remember saying, "Look at this guy; he has his picture on it." And I was like, with an American flag, and Brito, our boss at that time, the big guy. I mean, he was so full of life, man. He was like, "He's hired. Let's get him in here." And it was funny because I remember sitting down with you and interviewing you, and that was my old store, so it was something that was very personal to me. That somebody taking over that position really needed to have the same drive that I did. And I mean, from the first second I met you, man, I knew you had that drive, and just seeing you grow year after year, staying in contact after you left Penny's. Look, man, you just every time I pull up your Instagram or your Facebook, man, it's something new going on, and it doesn't surprise me, to be honest with you. But I'm very proud of you for everything, man.
Dude, that means a lot, more than you know, man. So yeah, I did that. For those of you guys that don't know the art of resumes, put your picture on there and surprise people,
Yeah,
because it gets an interesting response.
absolutely, man.
So building on that, the whole American flag thing, me knowing a little bit about your background, you were in the military, correct? Marines.
Yes, yep. The Marine
So
Corps.
how do you think that being with your military background, right? Some people, everybody I've met that's been in the military has taken away either good or bad, no judgment, from their experience in the military. How do you think that's guided you, either good or bad, in your your journey in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, man. So I'll start off with the bad. I think the bad. I don't necessarily say it's a bad, but I think some people take it a negative aspect. Is there's no shit with me. Like there's it's a job that needs to be done, and you do it. It's simple as that. The Coach Belichick from the Patriots, our former Patriots coach, says just do your job, and that's the military motto. At least in the Marine Corps, it was like I don't care if you don't like it. You came here, you signed up for it, you do what you need to do. So some people, especially in the civilian world, especially when I got out of the Marine Corps, people did not understand that, and I didn't understand how to be able to navigate through those conversations. So I think that was kind of one of the negative pieces that I took me a little while to learn. I'll be honest with you, because I was just so used to telling people what they needed to do. I'm getting into the trenches with them, and that was my expectation, not only for myself but everybody around me. Um, the good thing is there's no stop, man. There's no. My wife and I, we talk about it so much, to where like so many people would have quit with everything that we've gone through over the last 9 years, even recently with some of the things that we've been building on, opening up new locations, having to work through many different agencies, a lot of red tape, and a lot of people we see them quit, man, and it's like why do they quit? And I think back, and one of the things I took from the military is I don't care what's in my way. I'm going through it, and I'm taking out whatever's in my way to get there. So I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good motivational tool, not only for myself but people around me, because they know that I'm not going to just lay down and just say, "Hey, we're done," right?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've taken from the military. But then also all the great leaders that I met throughout the military, man, like just seeing people do what was needed to get the job done. I've really learned from that, and I would say there's a lot of really good from just being in the military. You being a former police officer, it's the same camaraderie between people. Um, you build those relationships as well. There's many different people out there you meet, and you have to be able to get along with and get the job done.
No, absolutely, you're right. You're absolutely right, and it goes to say a lot about people when you can make that transition. Even though we all fight demons, not just being military police, but as men in general. It's the conversation that I have with people, and you and I have it. To be honest with you, too, is as men, and nothing against women, but I can't get inside of a woman's mind. If I did, I'd be rich. But men, we don't talk about our struggles. We don't talk about things enough with each other. And that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast. So people like you and I can talk openly. Obviously it's going out to the world. It's going out to the world, but hopefully this will inspire other people and continue to do so. So to build on your experiences too, because you mentioned your wife several times. I love your wife. She's awesome, and we've had one. We need more date nights, but we've had one. We need more.
Yeah.
um, how interesting is it now? Because I don't work with my wife, right? I mean, I do, but I kind of work for her. But how interesting is it of a transition from working for somebody else to go into business with your wife? Do the conversations change at home, or how does that look?
Yeah, man, it's definitely difficult sometimes being able to learn to shut those things off. Before I used to be able to just come home and we'd shut it off, right? If I wanted to share about my day, I could. She wanted to share about hers, she could. But to be honest with you, man, it's hard shutting it off because there are still raw emotions and some decisions. Like I said, um, we have conversations all the time about, hey, I didn't really agree with what you said today. And the one thing we had to really learn to navigate through is not letting other people see when we disagree in front of them and having those.
Hey, this is a raw podcast. We keep it real.
um, so one, like the conversations we have, and one thing we've had to work through the last couple of months, because I am a newer entrepreneur. Like I literally just quit my job, what, 6 months ago, maybe 5 months ago. Um, Before I was in the background, I wasn't really involved as much, and I had to learn a lot coming on because now I'm seeing it every day. So some of those conversations are hard, man, because like I'm like, hey, I think we should change this, and that's the biggest thing is communication. Because before she already prepared herself to have that conversation, she had some time to think about it. She told me when she wanted to tell me what was going on with the business. Um, And my wife is one of the most amazing women I've ever met in my entire life. She inspires me every single day. So like there are sometimes I see those raw emotions and it's hard to pull back the husband piece, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard to pull back the business piece. And it's kind of find that good balance between it has really been, I think, I don't want to say tough because, like I said, I think we both great communicators. We have our opportunities sometimes, but she's still the boss, man. She's still, it's her business. She built it from ground up. I was just there to kind of give some advice. I come from the corporate world, so
Mhm.
I know many different things. That work, but I didn't really understand the marketing piece, the marketing giant that is behind being in corporate.
Yeah.
When there's mistakes made, it's us who make those mistakes. It's not other people making decisions and just following it. So that was a big transition for me, and having to go to my wife and saying, "Hey, I fucked up."
Mhm.
Like, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing."
Yeah.
I don't think in the first 12 years of our marriage, I don't think I ever really went to my wife and said, like, I'm embarrassed that I made this mistake because I never really had to because it was at work and I could kind of share with her what I wanted to. But there have been times where I'm like, hey, I really messed up this and how do we fix it? And,
Sure.
um, but yeah, man, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I know in the moment, sometimes we're just like, why did I leave my job? I should have just stayed. But then after emotions cool down, we sit down, we talk about it, have a mature conversation. And you know what? Ultimately, we get done what we set out to do. And It's just being an asset to the team.
Nice, nice, and that's something that's interesting that you bring up too, because it's something I tell people all the time, and I mean I say it jokingly to people, but it's really with real intention, is being able to separate business versus personal. And I joke about this, and I'm sorry, Mom, if you're watching, I'd fire my mom if I had to, because at the end of the day, you have to separate the two, and it has to be interesting. And you're already speaking to it about having your wife not only as a life partner but as a business partner. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
But
man.
but on the same topic too, this is something interesting that kind of popped in my mind too, because this is 100% a direct correlation with what's going on with you, with the business, because we spoke about it. But it's we're in similar positions that maybe a lot of you guys are watching right now. You and I both being married to women who we have children with, but who had children prior to us, and for us to step into that father role, that dad role, it's an interesting dynamic. It's been very very interesting for me. My daughter's 24 now. Um, your son is 18. He just turned 18.
Yep, just turned 18.
How do you think that prepared you for life in general? I has to be. I guarantee you have some interesting stories because you told me, but him being involved with the business too, you got to be proud, and your wife, I'm sure, is proud too. But it's got to bring a little kind of dynamic to say, where do I turn off dad and where do I turn off owner?
Yeah, man. He works mostly at the new location that we're at with me. Um, so there are some conversations that we got to have that are a little hard. One thing I've learned is I gotta if I'm gonna have the conversation with them, it's not at home. Because the difference between my wife and I having those conversations at home is, we're, she's in her late 30s, I'm in my early 40s. We're mature enough to be able to handle and be able to have that conversation and say, look, we're not going to have this conversation right now in like a respectful manner. Um, and I do have to realize, like, what he he hasn't learned that yet, and I have to give him that respect. Um, but when we're at work, the conversation is had. Like, I don't treat him any differently than any other employee that we have. Um, if he's not clocking in and out for his time and just thinks he's going to get paid, I won't fix his time card. He doesn't get paid, and he's like, "Hey, my check was short this week." Well, why is that? And we go back through, and I'm like, because you didn't do what you needed to do, like be responsible. Um, but there are some times where it's hard shutting that off, man. Geez, he's worked now for us for about 2 years. He's worked for us since he was 16. Um, he's great with the kids. The kids absolutely love him. So ultimately, we know that he's good at what he does. Um, but we still treat him like an employee when he's at work. And then when he's at home, like him and I, we just went to a Ravens game, the opening game this past weekend.
Sorry about that.
We didn't talk about
We
work
all,
at
we all
all.
know the real game, the real team's 49ers. I'm sorry, but yeah, sorry about that.
Well, I'm not a Ravens fan either, but we had some really great seats. So he's a Ravens fan. So, but yeah, man, it was good just seeing him, as first time as an adult, sitting down at a game with me and just shooting the shit and just talking about things. No brothers and sisters around him. He can just kind of sit back and just chill and just do what he wanted to do and have the conversations and um, but again, it's just really being present and understanding, I think, with him. And, I could tell when he's a little upset with me because we had a hard conversation at work. And sometimes I got to put the dad hat on and say, hey, man, what's going on? And just
Yeah.
try to have the conversation with him. I'll be honest, I struggle with that. I didn't grow up with, my real dad. I had a stepdad. So I know that there are some things that I've been in his life since he was 5. So I know, like, it is hard to connect sometimes. But you know what? We still do it when we need to. Um, and like I said, I feel like our relationship is getting better. It's growing. Um, like you said, if you would fire your mom, I'm sorry, Charlie's mom, if you're listening. But we talked about, like, hey, if he steps out of line again, we're going to have to let him go. And we tell him that. We tell him at work, like, this is your final on this. We're not going to go through it again. So yeah, man, it's definitely interesting some days.
Yeah, and I'm glad you spoke on that too, because it's something that you know, I, the podcast is about business and life too, right? So there's a lot of people out there right now that are listening to this that are probably struggling and done the same things that we've done, whereas we came into, and vice versa, women in a men's life, men's in a women's life, that have come into a woman's life and seen that she already has a child, and it takes a lot to say, okay, I want to be in both of you guys' lives forever. It's a constant struggle, and it's interesting because it changes a whole dynamic of a relationship where you and a woman, myself and my wife, you and your wife, you take away the whole we just get to know each other phase, because you're getting to know her or him and their child, so it's a whole dynamic. But
Yeah.
on the same token, for everybody that's watching too, and I don't know if you felt the same way or not, but for me, as a man, one of the biggest things in finding a wife or finding a woman is wondering how they're going to be as a mom. I wonder how she'll be as a mom. When you meet a woman, and this is for the women that are watching, hopefully you're watching, that you already have a child and the dad or donor or whatever you want to call them is not in their life, it's really important for men, real men at least, to see how you are as a mom. And for me, that answered a lot of questions that I didn't have to ask. I saw that and I said, you know what? This works. So I don't know if that was the same experience with you.
Yeah, man, I'll be honest with you. I never really thought I'd had kids. I didn't really want kids before I met her. But when I saw her as a mom, it made me want to have kids. And just being able to get to know, you know, my son. You know, we skipped the diaper phase and the terrible twos and all that. Um, and I didn't really know exactly how to be a dad or anything, but she taught me. She was like, "No, you need to go in there and have that conversation with him about this," or, "Hey, you were a little rough on him on this, the way that you yelled at him, or, something along those lines." And I had to learn that, and she taught me that, and that made me want to have more kids. And now we have four,
Well, yeah.
and I wouldn't change it for the world. And you're absolutely right, like there was nothing more attractive than seeing her as a mom and being able to not only do it herself for the first 5 years, but also be so confident to be able to um, get into a relationship with somebody who didn't have kids, wasn't sure about having kids, and being able to be patient with me. So I really appreciate that from her. And like I said, man, she inspires me every day, not just in business, it's just in life in general. And um, you can't ask for a better person, at least in my eyes, to meet somebody that you can instantly fall in love with, instantly fall in love with their son, and just realize that your life is going to go down a different path that you weren't really 100% sure that you were ever going to follow.
Yeah.
So,
That's amazing, man. And to jump a little bit backwards on a conversation where your wife left her job to get into entrepreneurship. How difficult of a decision? I mean, I know how it was because we talked about it, but how difficult as a decision was it for you to make that transition from corporate to, oh crap, now I'm in charge of everything, essentially, like my own destiny? How the goods and the bad, like how hard of a transition was that for you?
I think you said, man, you're responsible for everything. Um, I said it earlier. You don't realize what you have behind you of helping you and telling you what to do every single day, what the expectations are. Having a boss telling you, like, hey, this is what you're going to do this day, and hey, this isn't working, this is a new idea. Everything's on us now. Like, everything is, I think that's one of the most stressful things. Um, then also is the uncertainty of the paycheck, right? The paycheck stopped coming in, right? And you have to be able to navigate through that and say, hey, look, I'm not going to get paid this week. It is what it is. Or hey, we can't go on that vacation um, in a couple of months, or just drop. Like before, we used to be able to just drop what we're doing and just go on a weekend trip, right? Um, Now it's kind of a little bit more difficult because we both have things going on. The financial piece is there. Um, there's a lot of different things that you really don't know how to prepare for it, and you just gotta kind of just dive in. And I think it's something that you said a while back was like, you say all the time, like, you're either punching the clock or punching your boss out. I got to that point to where like, not that I would ever get physical with any of my bosses, um, but I got to the point where I was like, I'm just tired of, like, I know how to do this,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't need somebody, breathing down my neck telling me how to do something.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a fairly easy decision for me after I committed to doing it. I think it was really hard for me to commit to do it because Charlie, we've been talking about this. I think I sat down with you in your office almost a
It was
year
a while
ago,
ago.
and I said I'm leaving next week, and you're like high fiving me across the desk. You're like, "Yeah, man, let's go." And we talked to each other like a month later, like, "So how is it, man?" And I'm like, "How's what?" And you're like, "You quit your job, right?" I'm like, "Fuck, no, I didn't quit my job yet, man. I just can't. And I had a hard time doing it, man. It was tough. It was tough making that decision. But once I made the commitment, I said to my wife, I said, I put in my 2 weeks in, and that's it. Once I give it, I'm done. I'm committed, and I'm coming on board. And she was like, let's go. Let's get this done. I'm telling you, man, if there's anybody out there listening and wants to have a conversation, you know, you're the guy to reach out to because you are one of the people that really motivated me um,
Appreciate that.
to say, hey, you know what? It's time to make that commitment. And just seeing your videos every single day made me think about like that's something that I know that if I got into it, I'll be successful doing. And you and I sat down several times, had conversations, and you're always honest with me, and you're always told me like you never sugarcoated anything. And I appreciate that because there's not very many people out there that would do that. There's not very many people that would be like, you know what, I'm going to tell this person to leave their job or whatever, or not tell the bad stuff that's involved with it too. Because there are times that you're like, hey man, I I had a hard time with this, and this is going to be something that you're going to have to deal with. And I'm glad I had some of those conversations with you because as those things did come up, and recently they did come up, I was able to navigate through it a lot easier because I was prepared for it. Now there are things I wasn't prepared for, but you know what? Going back to what we talked about earlier is I'm not going to lay down. I'm not going to sit back and say, okay, well that's it. I mean, we changed our business model um, at our new location 3 times in the past 6 months because we started something, we realized it's not what we thought it was, so we need to change it. Um, and just making those quick decisions was so imperative to us being successful here.
That's awesome, man. I mean, you're a testament to what can be done when you don't give up. To be honest with you, and on a side note about speaking about not giving up too, I know you have a podcast. Just go and plug that real quick because I want to see more.
Yep.
So, what's the podcast called?
So I haven't really come up with a name yet.
Yeah.
I think I've been kind of working through some stuff. We talked about serial entrepreneur, something like that, because we don't just own childcare services. My wife does photography on the side. She does consulting. I'm going to start doing some consulting. Um, that's where my passion is, and within leadership. I also, like I said earlier, I do carpentry, and I, you know, love doing woodwork and building furniture and working on people's houses and things like that. So I'm really interested in, doing that a little bit. There's some licenses that I got to get, and I'm learning through that process. But that's kind of like a passion project for me. But the podcast is really where I just want some raw feedback, what it's like to become a new entrepreneur. Because especially at 40, like
Yeah.
I've had a career. I've worked 25 years in the corporate world, and I've always had that backing. I've always had a paycheck. Um, I work with my wife. So there's so many like raw emotions and raw feedback that I want to be able to give out there to people.
Mhm.
So I'll probably be launching my first episode of just an introduction of, kind of maybe sharing some of the stories that you and I talked about, like just in life of where I've been and what I've done and where I want to go. Um, And then after that, I'm just gonna like sort of like set up the same way that you kind of have things set up here, is just talk to some people. And I mean, even if they're not entrepreneurs, it's somebody that I find interesting and just have a real conversation with.
Yeah.
Um, so again, it's more of a passion project. I love leadership. When I was in the Marine Corps, quick story there, I went in for computers, and I sat down for the first day in the room for my first class, and I sat down. I'm trying to figure out how to turn on the laptop. I'm trying to push all these buttons, trying to turn on. 12 other Marines to come in, they start writing code immediately, and I looked around and said, "All right, this is not me. Like if I'm going to do this for the next 4 years at minimum,
Mhm.
this isn't me." And I had to learn real quick what it was like to be somebody who was in a job that you didn't really like,
Mhm.
didn't really know, didn't really feel passionate about. So I just clammed onto leadership, and I got into leadership roles, and I changed my MOS, and um, just absolutely loved doing what I did in the Marine Corps after that as a leader. And that's really where my passion is, and that's really what I want my podcast to be about: leadership and entrepreneur from the beginning, and just raw. I don't want any sugarcoats. I don't want to sit down with entrepreneurs that are going to sit there and tell you everything's great. I want people who are going to come on and say, "Look, I remember that shit was fucked up. Like,
Yeah.
let's um, how do you navigate through those things?" So that's really what I want it to be.
I love it, man. There's not enough of people like you right now um, that are willing to share true stories and from beginning to end and keep it real. To be honest with you, there's a lot of one thing that I hate, and I don't like the word hate, but I just very much dislike it are these entrepreneurs who become wealthy, quote unquote, and then they want to sell you something. I don't want to sell you anything on. I don't want to sell you on anything other than your own dream. I don't want to, come talk to me. Let's talk to Rick, talk to all of us. A true entrepreneur does not care about getting money from you. Like money in life, once you start making a couple dollars, it gets easier and easier. Once you figure out the dollar, then it's easy. The harder part is networking. Your network's your net worth. Like creating true relationships with people that you can call on. Hey, if I need something, I can call on him. Giving. One thing that I learned is really important that I love to share with people is giving without expectation. Like if you need something, I got you. I don't want anything from it, but here you go. So that's really really important.
Yeah.
So what's as I end all my podcasts, what's next? What's the next big move? Where do you go from here?
Yeah, so man, I kind of touched on it earlier. The podcast is probably my next thing that I really want to jump into. Um, the third location, we're not 100% up and running. We're kind of open to the public for some open play. We have 10,000 square feet of just kids being able to run, jump, and play. Um, it's a STEM base, so it's called STEM Fit Kids. It's out in Glen Burnie, the Sun Valley Shopping Center. Again, not trying to sell you guys to it, but I'd love to see you
No,
guys
no,
come
please.
out
They
and
need to know.
um,
We need more places.
yeah, and it's just a place for kids to really explore the STEM activities. My wife, again, she's the brains behind it. STEM, if you're not familiar with it, is scientific, technology, engineering, and mathematical. So we have a bunch of building blocks, a lot of reading things happening. We do classes. Again, we changed this thing so many different times. It's always been based around STEM, but how do we get out to the community? We do some free events for vendors to come out, other family based vendors to be able to come out and talk about their businesses, and not only just have people come into our indoor play area, but also be able to share these other things, community resources, which is absolutely needed and is an amazing resource for anybody out there, families, young or old families. I mean, it's always something to be able to share and be able to build off of. God, what other things? My wife is restarting back up her photography studio. So she's actually going to be doing it here out of STEMFit. She's going to be doing family photos, and that's her passion project. Is something she loves absolutely doing. She does it for her daycares, and her people at her daycares absolutely love it. Which her daycare is called Little Scholars Childcare. So if you're looking for childcare, you can't get a better person to be able to take care of your kids. The most precious thing that you have out there. Um, And then the last thing is I really want to get back into building furniture and building unique pieces for people because I feel like it's something that, again, the passion for me is being able to create stuff. And I know I really want to explore that for myself and be able to share that with other people. So, but yeah, man. Um, yeah, that's what I got going on. A lot going on. You can see the grays coming in. But you know what? It's going to get grayer and fuller. And I don't have to explain to my boss why I have a big beard. So that's good.
That's awesome, man. Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast. We've been friends for a long time. We're gonna be friends for a lot longer, and business associates and confidants and all that stuff. So thanks, man. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks, man, for having me on. And like I said, we'll be in touch. We'll, have to
Oh,
get
yeah,
that date
absolutely.
night going again.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everybody watching, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this episode today and for allowing us to arm you with the knowledge to be successful in life and business. If you're at your 9 to 5 today, hopefully you're not punching the clock, or you're punching the clock and not punching your boss, like I always say. I'll see you guys on the next episode of Armed and Successful.